Welcome back. After nearly 3 years of work, Sarasota's Comprehensive Treatment Court is set to launch in January. So how will it work? The plan is for the program to treat up to 100 nonviolent offenders each year, with about 25 people receiving treatment at one time. Centerstone will be overseeing the treatment, ensuring participants have access to medication and outpatient care. The Department of Children and Families gave a 3-year grant for the program of $1.2 million. Local contributors bring the total funding to about double that amount. And joining us for more on the Comprehensive Treatment Court is Terry Drake of Sarasota's Public Defender's Office, Craig Schaefer, Chief Assistant State's Attorney for the 12th Judicial Circuit, and Melissa Larkin-Skinner, Chief Clinical Officer for Centerstone. Thank you all for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Where did this idea come from?
I think the idea really came from Judge Quartermain. She knows through her experience in the courts here in Sarasota that there are a lot of people that she sees over and over that are known to have serious mental health issues, and they just keep cycling through the courts, the jails, out on the street, the courts, the jails, out on the street.
But we've known this for years. I mean, I used to have the court beat back a long time ago, and you know, I saw the people that you folks see, you know, every single day, and we knew that it was responsible for a lot of the overcrowding that we see in the local jail. So how come it's taking a judge in Sarasota to try something that really has not been going on in much of the state?
I think also Judge Quartermain, obviously this was her brainchild, but also Sheriff Knight from the Sheriff's Office, as well as Major Bell. I know that a few years ago he was put in as the warden of the jail, so to speak, and I think that he worked closely with Judge Quartermain to try to push this through as well, and then contacted our office as well as the Public Defender's Office.
I'm sorry, and I also believe that Judge Quartermain, being a newer judge, she has more experience, recent experience, since she was a prosecutor, and for a long time she was a misdemeanor prosecutor. She has more recent experience in seeing how big of an impact something like this could have for caseloads in the community at large. So I think that was a large determining factor.
Is it possible to say what percentage of people who are in our local jail are suffering from substantial mental health issues and drug addiction issues, as opposed to your, offenders, criminal offenders who may not be?
My personal caseload, I would say probably 60% of them have a mental health issue. Of those 60, probably 40 of them have a co-occurring disorder, which means that they have a mental health issue and they have a substance abuse issue. And then there's probably a good chunk of them that just have substance abuse issues.
And Craig, you talked about how this kind of stems from Judge Quartermain's experience as a prosecutor. Has there been an evolution of approach amongst prosecutors in terms of how to handle cases like this?
I think that Ed Brodsky, who's the state attorney who was elected in 2013, I think he is much more progressive in the views. And it's not just him. I think around the state, I think a lot of the state attorneys are more progressive in diversion programs generally. So as for, this is just one more diversion program of a specialized class of defendants that we see revolving over and over through the court system, that we recognize, along with the healthcare professionals in the Public Defender's Office and the Sheriff's Office, that we need to do something different. What was working wasn't working. So, we've done something similar with prostitution type cases. We've double drug court, and this is just one other aspect of what we've done and what Ed Brodsky's done in our office. Obviously, I've heard other folks and elected officers say, that our biggest mental health facility is the Sarasota County Jail.
Yeah.
And that's the truth. Right now, we have more mental health patients in the Sarasota County Jail than anywhere else, and it's unfortunate.
And what is Centerstone doing that is almost novel in terms of working with these individuals in the setting that has really not been done too much before around here? So
what's novel is the close coordination with the courts, the State Attorney's Office, Public Defender's Office, Judge Quartermain, as well as the Sheriff and Major Bell, and then taking the treatment to wherever the future clients are located. So the staff will actually be out on the streets. They'll go to the jail, they'll go out on the streets, wherever people are, so that we can provide the services that they need, because it's very difficult for people who are struggling with a mental health issue or are homeless for them to be able to get to an appointment. to be seen by a psychiatrist or a therapist or to get their medication. So the staff will do this for them.
All right, we are just starting on this subject with our roundtable, but when we return, we'll bring you a look at our full weather forecast, so stay with us. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, we are discussing plans for Sarasota's Comprehensive Treatment Court. Our guests tonight are Terry Drake with Sarasota's Public Defender's Office, Craig Schaefer, Chief Assistant State's Attorney for the 12th Judicial Circuit, and Melissa Larkin Skinner, Chief Clinical Officer for Centerstone. So let's explain how this works. There is an arrest, maybe an individual for trespassing or a minor drug offense. The files wind up at the State's Attorney's Office and the Public Defender's Office. What happens next?
Well, hopefully, before there got to be a file, the idea is that a law enforcement officer would make contact with a misdemeanant on the street. They would bring them into the jail. The person at the jail in the booking department would say, basically, you have a misdemeanor crime, you meet our criteria, you can either be further booked into the jail, or you can come over and you can speak with this case manager. We can try to hook you up with some services, and you won't have to be in jail tonight.
But that is dependent upon the individual being able to make that kind of decision.
Correct. And if they're not able to make a decision at that particular time, either because due to their mental illness, they're in some state of psychosis, or if they come in and they're under the influence or something and they're not able to make that decision, then either myself or somebody from my office would go back within 24 hours and revisit it and say, okay, now that you're feeling a little bit better, these are your choices. Which option would you like to pursue at this time?
At that point, they are in the jail.
If they were not able to make that decision when they first came in.
Is the prosecutor's office involved in that case at that point at all?
Our only involvement would be if they went to first appearances, which they're entitled to go if they stayed in jail. Placement's going to be an issue, obviously. Getting them, even if they wanted help, they'd have to be placed in an appropriate facility, and that's where Centerstone comes in. Our involvement is really working on the list of cases that we're comfortable allowing these folks to be released into the community.
And let's be clear about what kind of cases are those.
It's trespass and vagrancy in the park, or disorderly conducts, or disorderly conducts or disorderly intoxications. When we get into batteries and crimes of violence, we have victims that we have to deal with and take their wishes into account as well, and there's a public safety factor as well. So it's a lot of the low-hanging fruit types of crimes where these people just do it, they get out of jail, and historically, they would get a day in jail or a weekend in jail, and then you'd see them back again.
But what happens if it's an individual who's arrested for a misdemeanor, as you described, but they have a history of felony arrests?
We would look at the felony arrests, we would look at the type of crime they're being charged with, and we'd have to decide balancing public safety and their criminal history. If there's violence in their history, that would be obviously a significant red flag for us allowing them in the program. I think it would also be a significant red flag for allowing them in any kind of treatment facilities or residential facilities as well.
Now, keep in mind that there are a lot of people watching this tonight who are saying, I don't want any of these people on the street.
Nobody wants them on the street. What people want is for them to be safe and for them to have the services that they need. Right now, we don't have those services available. So this is a first step and a collaborative effort for all of us to work together. Because right now, people are treating social problems as a criminal problem. If your child self-medicates, you call a cop. If the person has mental illness and they're screaming on the corner, you call a cop. So the criminal justice system is turned into a social service agency. So this is the first step to get things back in the right direction, whereas the people who are out on the street who need these services can actually get them and get them properly, and the people who really deserve to be in the jail will end up in the jail, and this is the first step.
So let's say an individual meets the specifications for the program and Centerstone gets involved. How do you, it's not just treatment, but how do you arrange for available bed space at Centerstone or elsewhere? How exactly does that work?
So we have partnerships lined up with Sarasota Salvation Army, with First Step of Sarasota, and also with Community Assisted and Supported Living. And the process will be that we'll get them immediate shelter with the Salvation Army while we're working with them, trying to explain the program a little more, get them to cooperate with going to see our psychiatrist or having our psychiatrist come to see them. We'll do some case management, find out as much history as we can. And then the idea will be as they get a little bit better and understand the program more, that they will move into supported housing and then eventually into permanent housing.
We have talked often on this broadcast about the homelessness issue in Sarasota and the availability of beds. As we speak right now, are there enough places, enough beds out there to meet the individuals who need it and come through this program? So
the partnerships, we've specifically set aside beds for the people that will be in this program. So the answer is yes, because the community foundations have come together, the city, the county, as well as the state grant, and then of course all of the legal system players have come together to make sure that this happens.
Let's talk a little bit about money, because you have this initial funding from a variety of different sources. Is that continued funding dependent on what kind of results you get?
Yes, and all funding really is. So all of those entities have committed to 3 years, but we have to perform. So there's certain outcomes that we're going to have to meet. We're going to have to serve a certain number of people. We have to make sure that those people get benefits, that we have places for them to go, that we get them off the streets, that we keep them out of the jails. I mean, one of the things that we'll be looking at is rearrest, because the idea is we don't want them to be rearrested.
So if there is a rearrest, what happens?
They could conceivably get back into the program. Hopefully they're not going to be arrested on serious charges. She referenced the rearrest. That would be a significant benchmark, I think, for a lot of the stakeholders who have invested in this program. But I know that this is modeled off a program in Miami-Dade, and the recidivism rate is like 76% much lower after they instituted a program similar to this. So there's high optimism that this program will be successful in our community.
But we have, through knowing that there was that Miami-Dade model and having some of the statistics there, we know that sometimes it takes a person 2 or 3 times, especially if they have a severe mental illness, for things to click. So there is a certain amount of recidivism that's expected, but there are safeguards in the program to determine that nobody abuses that.
How long has that Miami program been going, and what kind of results has it had over time? And is this model being used elsewhere around the country? And if so, has it been successful?
I don't know how long the Miami, I think maybe 3 to 5, somewhere between 3 and 5 years maybe. I can't assuredly speak to that, but there are diversion models all over the country. I think that ours is somewhat unique, and it's different from Miami-Dade in that this program actually provides treatment. In Miami-Dade, they refer people for treatment with the providers down there. There are a lot more providers in Miami-Dade. It's a much larger area. And so, but for Sarasota County, the program will actually provide the treatment, which is what's different about it.
Most people don't understand what the difference is between a county jail and the state prison system. So I want to ask, are there any applications for this on a broader scale within the state prison system? But it's important to note that if you're in the state prison, you're convicted of a felony, and we're talking about a different animal?
That's correct. If you're convicted of a felony and you're going to prison, not everybody who commits a felony goes to prison, but if you're going to prison, you've committed a felony that's on a sentencing score sheet that's pretty aggravating, or your criminal history is pretty lengthy to go to prison. First offenders don't go to prison unless it's a serious type crime. So when it comes to funding, and we've heard all about the funding, this is like even though we have DCF funding half of it, but we have local commitments for the other half of our funding for the next 3 years. In the prison system, if we had a component in prison that dealt with this, it would have to be completely funded by the state.
Because there are people who wind up in state prison. Mental health issues are still huge there, are they not?
They are huge, and as a matter of fact, if you've ever seen any of the statistics or any of the photos of what happens to mentally ill people in the prison, it's devastating what happens to them.
All right, we have a little bit more time in our next break to talk about this. I want to talk about that fact coming up. But when we return, we'll have final thoughts with our guests, along with what some of you are saying about Friday night's topic about giving money out to the homeless. So stay with us. Can the Comprehensive Treatment Court help break the cycle of incarceration and get low-level offenders the help they need to get off the street and into care? Our guests join us now with final thoughts. Here's the question. Where do you all hope that this goes, and if it is successful, if you see results? And, Craig, why don't we start with you?
Simply that the same folks who, it's a revolving door in the jail. If we could stop that with getting them the treatment they need that they have not been able to get, I think would be number one. Number two is I think that if people see the success that the community, not just the foundations, but other folks in the community that have the ability to help out providing services, helping provide whatever vocational services, whatever these folks need, I think would be a goal. Because the more people that realize that mental illness permeates our whole community, the more we could help, the better.
There's also an issue that, the jails have been overcrowded here and everywhere. It's been a vexing problem for many years, and there could be a cost-benefit success to this.
I believe that there could be. I think the more that people become aware that mental illness is not a crime, I think the more that they'll focus on the crimes that truly need to be dealt with. And hopefully, in the long run, if we narrow it down to those few set of people, we can put the resources where they really need to be and stop, criminalizing people or putting mentally ill people in a situation where their condition becomes worse and it's more of a burden.
But Melissa, whether it's a drug addiction or mental health issues, recovery in some mental health issues, you don't necessarily recover from your underlying illness, but it is not a predictable result. So is this a trial and error type of situation, or what do you hope in terms of the results that come out of this program?
What I really, really hope happens is that we catch people early enough, like say their first arrest or their second arrest, to stop the cycle in its tracks before it even starts. Because right now what we're really talking about is people that have already been in and out of the jail, in and out 30, 40, 50 times. And so what I really hope is that this program continues well beyond the 3 years and that we can stop it for the younger folks when they first get involved.
Can that be done the first time, stopping that cycle?
Absolutely.
Okay. We have to leave the conversation right there. But before we go, we want to share with you what some of our viewers are saying about Friday's show. It is the time of year when many people are in the giving mood, but should you be giving cash to the homeless? Law enforcement and charities offering resources to the homeless say no. According to the homelessness expert Robert Marbut, 93% of all cash donations goes to drug or alcohol. And here is what some of you are saying. Donna Farina writes, I hand out backpacks with clothes, water, bottles of food. And when I get to know them, if they need a bike or shoes, I get them too. I have met amazing people who have fallen on difficult times and seek to improve their lives. I've never had an issue with anyone. Christian, I am a Christian, I will not judge. Melanie Dietrich writes, I have no problem giving cash, food, or whatever they like. It makes me feel good. If they choose to buy beer, food, anything that's their choice, I don't give with restrictions. And Joni Mass writes, what a judgmental lot. We are humans. I give them money if I'm moved to. Well, if you'd like to join the conversation about tonight's topic, just visit our Facebook page at facebook.com/news@7. And FYI, want to watch past Roundtable discussions? They're available on Apple TV, Amazon Fire, and Roku. We want to thank our guests for being here tonight. Terry Drake is an attorney with Sarasota's Public Defender's Office. Craig Schaefer is Chief Assistant State's Attorney for the 12th Judicial Circuit. And Melissa Larkin Skinner is the Chief Clinical Officer at Centerstone.